Welcome to the show. What are the future kingdoms of the world? Do some societies and religions have a laid out map for the future as the Jews do, with the building of the temple of Solomon and Herod, the Ark of the Covenant, and the compact with God, while other nations all tied together like Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar, Saddam Hussein, Israel, Syria, Damascus, they all have a certain bloodline or blood flow. In Ezra 1 through 4, in the New Revised Standard Version, there was a king named Cyrus, and he was technically an Assyrian king who ruled Persia. Now, King Cyrus wasn't necessarily a Jew or Muslim, but you'll find out what his permissive personality was. In the first year of the king, Cyrus of Persia, in order that the word of the Lord by the mouth of Jeremiah might be accomplished, the Lord stirred up the spirit of King Cyrus of Persia, so that he sent a herald throughout all of his kingdom, and also in a written edict he declared, "Thus says the King Cyrus of Persia, the Lord, the God of heaven, has given me all the kingdoms of the earth, and he has charged me to build him a house at Jerusalem in Judah. Any of those among you who are of his people, may their God be with them, are now permitted to go up to Jerusalem in Judah and rebuild the house of the Lord, the God of Israel. He is the God who is in Jerusalem, and let all the survivors in whatever place they reside be assisted by the people of their place with silver and gold, with goods and animals, besides freewill offerings for the house of God in Jerusalem." So the king of Persia also had another name. It was called the King of the Four Winds. And he was a good ruler. He ruled all the way from Bulgaria to the Indus River Valley and to the western part of the Middle East. I'm going to talk about two kingdoms tonight. There's the coming temple, the third temple mount of Jerusalem, that many believe should be built on Haram al-Sharif, which is the mount where the Dome of the Rock is. But technically, the historical location of the first two temples were Gihan Springs. Now, I'll just give you a brief history. Muhammad was believed to be left on the Mount of Haram al-Sharif, where the new Dome of the Rock is built, the newer. He left on to heaven on a steed or horse, according to Islamic tradition. Jerusalem has been attacked and purged. It's been attacked 44 times and purged twice. There were 7 gates to the old Jerusalem city, and one was shut off by Suleiman, called the Golden Gate, in 1541. He believed that the new Messiah of the world would arrive through that gate. I believe it was number 7 or 8. Now, David renamed Jerusalem in 1003 BC, and he wanted to build a house of God that would host the Ark of the Covenant. Well, the part where Suleiman sealed off that golden gate, there was also a fortified hill called the Offal which meant kind of like hands off, don't go near there. But around 1000 BC, David bought a threshing floor in order to, just for not too many shekels, in order to rebuild the kingdom. Now, God told David that Solomon would be prepared with the task of building the kingdom. Building the temple, and he built it, and it lasted 400 years. It was made of gold and fine stones and minerals. But Nebuchadnezzar destroyed it in 586 BC when he plundered Jerusalem. That was the first major destruction of Jerusalem. Then, less than 50 years later, in 536 BC, the Persian king Cyrus, led by Nehemiah, rebuilt the second temple, and it was under the direction of Zerubbabel. Herod reconstructed it 500 years later and made it better, but it was destroyed by the Roman leader Titus in 70 AD. Now, the funny thing is Jesus himself predicted that there would be a destruction of the temple in 70 years after his death. And that was a prophecy that came true. Ezekiel's layout of his third temple has not yet been built. But the good news is the old two temples were built near the Gihan Springs, which is one of only 12 geysers in the world. And in 70 AD, the second temple was destroyed, but the Jews do not necessarily have to build the new temple where the Dome of the Rock is, because the old two temples, where 1,000 of the old stones were found from the previous temple, is about 500 to 1,000 yards south of there in the Gihan Springs. Now, I'm just going to read you another quick quip about the next kingdom of the Koreans. I see Don on the line, and I am going to give him an opportunity to talk. So I think I'm going to let Don go first, because Ben and John are going to be joining the show a little late. And Don has limited time tonight. Good evening, Don.
Hi, Jane.
Hi, are you in the Uber vehicle already?
No, I'm at home eating dinner for the most part. This is my dinner time in between more or less shifts. I work whenever I
can you just give us a quick rundown of the event that you had on Friday and the one coming up this week?
Sure, that's my pleasure. We are having we had what we call a Symposium on Community and Policing. And that has, when these temples keep getting torn up and rebuilt, that's also an aftermath of the police gone wrong or gone militant. And so we want to make sure that here in Reno, Nevada, we don't have a police presence that's going to tear down any temples or perform genocide on any of the citizenry. But we had this forum, and it was a fair kind of like where we had entertainment. The entertainment was the Raven helicopter, which is especially the helicopter for rescues and other various police functions, following suspects who are running and things like that. We had the SWAT tank and bomb squad, all the police motorcycles from different departments, because each department has their own motorcycles here in northern Nevada. And when I speak of departments, we predominantly have 5 different departments, and that would be the Reno Police Department, Sparks Police Department, Washoe County Sheriff's Department, the University of Nevada Police, and the Washoe County School District Police, and then statewide the Nevada Highway Patrol. So that's 6 entities that participated in our fair and we had some of the most influential panelists in northern Nevada speak, from law enforcement, from immigration,
and did the
mental health.
NAACP organize it?
Yes, I was in the middle of the organization of this. This is our fourth year, so we're still trying to find the right recipe of police and participation and community and agency organizational participation, because in this particular forum I put together usually about 2 or 3 different ones a year, big ones. But this one, the police have always had the desire to dominate the discussions. So we had it at our university, UNR, which is University of Nevada, Reno, for the first 3 years, and we tried to bring that to the community this time. So we brought it to the Boys and Girls Club, which is on 9th Street here, and that's one of our lower income areas, but we wanted to see if the community would participate, and it was a very nice turnout. We had about 35 tables around that people could go see what was offered and opportunities in the county in northern Nevada. So we had a very, very good turnout, a very good it would have been outstanding. I'm hesitant to use that word in this particular instance because it was extremely good all around, except for our panels. We had tables that immigration dominated. And I don't know if you know it, but Reno and generally all of Nevada is seeking to become a sanctuary-esque kind of city. And so we haven't label ourselves sanctuary city right now, but we have tried to. We call ourselves a welcome city.
I heard the ones that are already sanctuary cities. It's up to the local law enforcement to enforce federal immigration policies, but if they choose not to, there's nothing the feds can do about it.
But yes, there is. They can hold back federal funding. So.
Right. I did. I was going to say that Trump was planning on eliminating federal funding for those cities and cutting off things like Meals on Wheels.
Mhm. Exactly. Some of the senior programs, some of the general recreational programs, all those can be cut with federal funds that these units, divisions of the departments depend on for a lot of their services. And, when he starts cutting that and Planned Parenthood and everything else, I think people better start asking where that money would be going if he had the opportunity to do that. So that's a political stance that I believe everyone should take, Republican, Democrat, whomever you might be, independent. You should make sure that those monies are accounted for once they're taken from these individual departments' budget. But
I heard on an overall mass scale, though, that programs like Meals on Wheels they don't have that high of a budget from the Fed. Only a small percentage of their program is supported through federal funding. They get 80% donations from other places. Well,
that's fantastic in some ways, but don't underestimate that 20%. That 20% does not necessarily go to funding of food. It goes through the entire distribution process. It goes to the chairperson's salary. It goes into all kinds of ancillary services. But that 20% is extremely important for the organization to stay in business. So, yes, you are correct. But I don't even know if.
Well, why don't we talk about stuff we do know now? I wanted to mention to you that it's the 25th. Today is the 25th anniversary of the Rodney King verdict in the LA riots, And they had a good special here on local TV and national TV about people who lost children and families who lost children in that scenario because there was no policing in South Central. There was a few Korean families, several black families. They even showed the two black men who rescued the person who rescued Reginald Denny was a black man. He said that God spoke to him and told him to go in there and get him out of there. He planned a ride for him to the hospital, and he got him to the hospital just in time, and his life was saved within minutes. And the black man proclaimed that God had spoken to him and told him that he would be the one to go in there and do that. There was another Korean guy that got beat up on an intersection. He was pulled out of his car, and another black man knew him pretty well from all the years in the neighborhood, and he saved him too. It's funny how the news doesn't cover exactly who saved Reginald Denny after all these years. I had to watch a special about it.
No, the news covered it. I was down the street when it happened. That was
Really? Where were you? Near your father's house?
No, living with Pat. I lived with Pat. I had just moved in with Pat over off of at her family's house off of 85th and Western, 85th, Manchester and Western. And this all happened on Florence and Western. So Manchester and Western is only not even a mile away.
Like a mile?
So, yeah. So we were at home, and we heard about this all going down and made sure that we stayed at home. We didn't venture out of the house. There was nothing to do at that time. And immediately in the news of Reginald Denny, because the rescue, quote unquote, of Reginald Denny didn't happen until well into the beginning of the riots. The riots had started. I know it wasn't probably the first day. By the way, the guy who saved his life was named Titus Murphy. Well, yay, Titus. But anyway, Reginald was probably involved in that about half an hour after it started. And so when that came out, the news that Titus had, in fact, saved his life, that was renowned because, again, it shows you the complete hatred of the white man towards blacks, and it was just.
But the black man showed compassion.
Well, that's what we always do because black people don't have the capability to hate. It's about love. It's about respecting nature and humanity, and white people don't know that. They are just they're inhuman. They're unhuman. They don't have respect for life. They think that a currency or a bauble or something that glitters is everything that man could ever want. And they don't take into the fact that there are other things. There's beauty. There's family. There's animals. There's all kinds of things in nature that we should be very thankful for. And instead, they're always
our church does stuff like that. My church up here does stuff like that as far as honoring nature and celebrating Earth Day and telling they're involved in the Good Earth Project.
Mhm. Well, that's fantastic.
Yeah, I'm trying to. I was gonna play a clip from Titus Murphy, but I can't get the volume to work.
Okay.
Let me see if I. Not on this browser can I do it. Anyways, so when do you have to start driving tonight?
Well, I had a cousin from Boston come in Thursday, and we've been entertaining her.
On your side of the family?
Yeah, on my mom's side, and it's my mom's. Well, he's my cousin, and this is his daughter. So that would be my second cousin. But his father was Frenchie was my mom's cousin. So that would make him the great uncle of the great grandfather of her. Was my mom's father, cousin. I'm sorry. So anyway, I've got a pretty big family over there. But anyway, so she came here for the half marathon. Is like the Northern Nevada half marathon. I don't think that's the name of it, but
so she's a runner.
Yeah, and so she encouraged and persuaded my daughter Kelly and my other daughter Shannon to run in it with her. So they all three ran. And
well, they shouldn't run if they don't train, though.
Yeah, well, they didn't train, and they ran the 5K. So we're talking 3.5 miles.
That's cool.
Yeah, so they didn't run the whole thing. She did, no. And she was able to come in 7th. Cousin Tiffany from Boston. She came in 7th in her age group. Shannon came in 15th, and Kelly was 20th in her age group. So they did pretty well for not training. They all did pretty well, though.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. I didn't know you were that much in touch with all your relatives.
Oh, yeah. No, we're a close-knit family. This year, we will be having our 48th family reunion. So we're going to have, we've had 48 family reunions. We did miss 3. So out of 51 years, we've had 48 family reunions. And I'm trying to remember where this one is going to be. We had last year's in Fort McKinley, Fort Mitchell. There's a fort in Indianapolis, right outside of Indianapolis, Indiana. But I forgot which one. But we should be hosting one probably in the next 2 years here in Reno. And they haven't been here. We haven't hosted one in about 15 years. So it's about time that they came back. But, yeah, it's something you can come and help me plan for my family reunion.
That's cool. It's going to be in July, right?
Yeah, and usually the early part of July we have started traditionally right around 4th of July. And that was kind of cool for us because it allowed us to, in our travels, either going or coming, we saw many fireworks shows all over the country. And that was kind of nice to be able to see one fireworks show starting in one part of town, and you can see another one when you're 30 miles away in another town, and we'll see their fireworks show, and it was
That's
really,
cool.
really nice.
I don't want to cut you off, but Ben's been holding 2 minutes, and
okay.
Ben, I'm not going to take him off mute yet. I want for your sake, I want you to hear this brief interview, 2-minute interview by Henry KiKi Watson, an ex-Marine who was one of the ones who beat up Reginald Denny, because it's a lot of the things that you say on the air, whether it's valid or not. He was an ex-Marine, and I watched a special on the Riots Friday night, and he said there's only 2 ways that society looks at black people. But anyways, I'm just going to play it quick.
He didn't finish it? He didn't finish it and say 2 ways that they look at black people?
Well, wait, I'm gonna hope that this PBS interview brings it out, because I obviously didn't record what I was watching Friday night, so here we go.
Okay, because we don't have to listen to this, because we already know. We already know the degradation that white people have for us.
Over 20 years after the LA riots sparked by the Rodney King verdict, Henry KiKi Watson is speaking out. After truck driver Reginald Denny was pulled from his rig on the corner of Florence and Normandy, it was Watson who stomped on Denny's throat and held him there as rioters mercilessly tried to kill Denny. Why did you take part in it? Why did you do it?
Why did I do it? I don't have a explanation as to why. Nobody was in their right frame of mind, me included. So if we were in our right frame of mind, we wouldn't have been there in the first place. So I can't tell you why. I was upset along with everyone else. You know what I'm saying? So the anger just flowed out into the streets of the city.
Why were you so angry? Were you angry over the verdict? Were you angry over the treatment that African Americans had received in this area from the cops, from society? What was it personally with you?
It was everything. It was just a combination plate. You know what I'm saying? There was the police, the oppression, the crime, the drugs. I mean, it was a culmination of a lot of things. As a whole, as a people, we got tired of it. Enough is enough.
Why target an innocent bystander?
What can I say? Once again, I don't know Mr. Denny, and he just represented white America at the time, so it was just random, senseless violence. I mean, all those attacks that happened, it just happened. I mean, anybody who came to that intersection that wasn't black, they were assaulted.
Has white America changed in this last 20 years with its attitude toward black folks?
Not whatsoever. None. No. I don't think so. Still the same. I mean, the conditions are the same. Race relations are the same. Hostility is still the same. Anger is still the same.
Do you ever get concerned that the riots of 20 years ago could happen again today or possibly even worse?
Do I ever concern? History has a tendency to repeat itself.
Do you have regrets? Do you wish you could turn the clock back and not have done that?
No. I mean, it is what it is. I can't change that.
One thing I wanted to tell you guys is that, remember that girl that was killed for putting orange juice in her backpack? She was killed 13 days after the Rodney King beat-up video came out. She was shot to death by a Korean grocer woman. But anyways, well, I'm going to pull Ben in because I have to explain what I'm talking about tonight. So hold on a second.
Yeah, no, that Korean lady, the store owner was right down the street from where Pat lives, where we live.
Yeah,
and,
she ended up only getting 4 years. She got placed with. She was convicted for manslaughter, but she only got 4 years probation, 5 years probation, and 450 hours of community service. But the black girl who was only 13 or 14 told her 2 times that she was paying for it and showed her the money, but she shot her anyway. But anyways, hi, Ben. Tonight's topic, you're on the air, it's about the future kingdoms of the world, and we're going to be discussing North Korea. I've already talked about Israel and the rebuilding of the Third Temple and the previous temples, and we're also talking about the inner city of the United States, if they can be rebuilt for future kingdoms of the world. And we're basically talking about the roots of how places like Jerusalem was destroyed and Korea was divided, and what places have hope around the world and what places don't. How are you doing tonight, Ben?
I'm good. How are you guys?
I'm doing okay. Not great, but fine.
What's up, Ben?
How's it going?
Don was talking about his symposium that he puts on every year with the collaboration of the police community departments and the NAACP and the Boys and Girls Club, and how they're trying to build a new society there. But, Don, you did mention in a text that Nevada was being cut off of Obama funding for policies and forces and new equipment. Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Oh, no, it's not just Nevada. I'm talking about the fact that we've been working, and when I say we, I mean black community and the NAACP and ACLU have been working on developing and have implemented, with Obama's help, a 21st century community policing task force. I've mentioned that many times on this show. It's about a new set of code of conducts for police departments, where they just have to. All we were asking for is community, more community involvement, and for them to be just nicer. They don't have to roll around in their cars all day. They don't have to have, in all essence, they don't have to use their guns. They don't have to be super, goons.
Was it stemming from the Ferguson situation?
We were proposing it before Ferguson, but Ferguson, of course, was a very perfect time to get this out. And so we were working harder during Ferguson because we were able to have an audience that was receptive, sympathetic to what we were trying to say. So it did coincide, but we had this text earlier, the planned proposal, the proposed 21st century community policing. So right now, with the advent of our new president, all that is being thrown out the window. And we are being susceptible now to some of the same old things we used to, and when I say we, I'm talking about the entire country is now susceptible to racism, the increase of racism, overt use of force, and other methods that police feel is appropriate to, there are many words to describe it.
Well,
and
the Duluth,
none of them,
John joined us, by the way. Duluth, Minnesota has body cams now on their police officers.
Right, and that's one of the things that we had to make sure of, and that's why we don't have them yet, is because there is no guarantee that footage cannot be altered, and any information that is specifically written can be redacted in a costly manner. All the information that's on body cams that is on their audio and is on the audio and also transcribed has to be redacted in the editing process. So that is extremely time-consuming and expensive. So that's the hold-up on many of the body cam issues.
Well, there was one thing I forgot to mention, and John, you're off mute now too. Anyways, I wanted to say that right around the time that Rodney King was beat up, and then it was released to the public by the Citizen, there was also several raids by the Los Angeles police on crack cocaine dealers, and Daryl Gates was not a very good police administrator. He would send up to 1,000 people into neighborhoods and try to make all kinds of arrests, whether they were fake or real, and exaggerate the type of arrests that would happen, including planting evidence just to find out who the crack dealers were, because it was an epidemic, and that was another reason for the eventual LA riots that happened at the time of the verdict. So he would go and bust up a bunch of neighborhoods and just completely violate people's civil rights. I know that they had a forceful objective, but it wasn't very effective.
It was no objective. The objective was to disperse all the military equipment that they could possibly have. You were living there at the time. You were.
No, I wasn't. I moved back to the Midwest between 91 and 99, and I moved back in 99.
Well, anyway, Daryl Gates was there before 99. But what happened was that the military at that time was eager to give away a lot of its extra equipment. And Daryl Gates was the lead mayor. Lead.
He was the police chief.
Police chief in the country to take all of this military hardware for free. And so the military at that time, we were out of our wars, and we had some extra equipment. So Daryl Gates brought in the SWAT teams and the battering rams and everything else, but they were just military equipment until he reconfigured them. And he more or less invented a couple of different uses for this former military equipment. So that's what he was. Also, not only taking that equipment for free, but the federal government threw in cash so that they could help with the conversions.
Right. The reason they were able to detect the 3 people who beat up Reginald Denny is because they had sophisticated equipment, and they were filming from a helicopter to the point where they could detect the scars and tattoos on their arms. And that's how they were able to because there were no police down there when Reginald was being beat up. Anyways, let's just give John and Ben a chance to talk because we haven't given them a chance yet. And John lived in L.A. at the time, so I'm pulling John in. Hi, John and Ben. Do you guys have any comments based on what me and Don have been talking about already?
Oh, why don't we let Ben take the first crack?
Okay. Well, nobody likes to see military police or militarized police force, but on the other hand, there's some neighborhoods that are pretty militarized also, like some of the areas in South Central, and back in the 90s it was kind of localized into just neighborhoods that you don't want to be in, but now there's more.
Where do you think they got those munitions from? The white boy.
All over. The Mexican cartel can trade in arms. The CIA moves guns all over the place, just creating situations.
Yep.
Yeah, I forgot to mention that around the time of Rodney King, the early 90s and the late 80s is when the gangs started proliferating in L.A. and taking control of the turf. So it wasn't just the crack epidemic and the cheap sales, but it was the gang participation.
That Fast and Furious deal was a complete disaster. I don't know who was really in charge of that or who was responsible for that, but it was a disaster. And those kind of things should never happen.
Yeah, because let's find out who the few bad guys were. And Daryl Gates is partially responsible. He really had he was at a fundraiser when the verdict came in, and he told his police people to not even go into South Central to stop the crime. And two of the officers refused to listen to him, and they went down there anyway to save a couple of lives, and they almost got killed too. But he did a lot of things wrong, not just specifically the riots, but just his technique in trying to eliminate the crack epidemic. But by the way, right. John and Ben, the overall message of the show is, what future kingdoms will rise? Where will there be peace and prosperity, and where will there be continual destruction? So there is kind of an overall theme tonight. It's not just, we're only commemorating South Central because it's the 25th anniversary of the Rodney King verdict, April 30th, 1992. So, John, where were you during the riots?
We were bunkered down at work and basically getting ready to go home. We had to close early, and one of the guys, the bus systems shut down, so he got about halfway home, and he had to walk from West LA to Hollywood. So it was about, I don't know, maybe 7 miles. He probably had to walk 3 or 4. But it was an interesting era because to me, I'm still, the police acted wrong in the Rodney King thing. However, Rodney King was just not the poster child for what you'd want to riot over, as far as the person he was, not only before the arrest but after. Even after they had the judgment and everything, and he got some money. He just lived a very very rebellious kind of life, and that's the only thing I don't like, is when there's so much glorification of people that are just really bad people.
Well, it wasn't so much that it was him, but how he was treated. But one thing I want to mention in that special I saw that was very detailed Friday night is that Daryl Gates had imposed a chokehold in a way to stop somebody who was spent out on drugs. And 16 people died, including someone, I think his name was Ray Mincey. He was only 20 years old. And eventually the chokehold got banned. Did you hear about that phase of the LAPD where they were training their officers to put people in chokeholds? And then 16 people died in 1 year. So Daryl Gates was really a terrible administrator. And the chokehold was eventually banned.
No, he wasn't terrible. He did his job by killing as many blacks and Hispanics as he could. That's his job.
His name was James Mincey Jr., who died, and it was a $450,000 settlement.
Here again, you're not talking about the Boy Scouts. You're not talking about people at a Bible study. You're talking about situations like by the way, in tribute to our police department, I got shook down last night, and it was like on the bicycle, and they did their full thing, like where are you going, what's your name, and this and that, right? And I'm answering very politely, and he's like, step over here. Like, okay, here we go. It's time to drop my pants, right? So it's like, okay, and I was very careful with stuff, and he started asking questions. Do you have any warrants? Do you have any? Is there anything I need to know? I said, no, I got a clean record. And then he said, he asked a question. Oh, he said, are you registered? Now, I'm on a bicycle, and, I'm used to being pulled over in a car, and they're asking for registrations, proof of insurance, etc. So I said, do I need a registration? You mean for the bicycle to ride a bike? And he said, are you trying to be funny with me? And I said, no, I'm not. I'm just,
you're not bullshit. You're not bullshit.
Yeah, not at all. I'm like, I played it very like, hey, sirs, what do you need? And you're doing your job. Everything's cool. He said, no, are you a registered sex offender? And I said, no way. He said, no, not at all. I was laughing, but I was like, no, I told you I have a totally clean record. Nothing wrong, And I started kind of oversell myself. Listen, I teach music at the church on Pearl, 16th and Pearl Street. We're 3 blocks away from it. I said, live another couple blocks away on 2041 Euclid. I'm on the board of directors for the HOA, the Homeowners Association. I've lived here 20 years. I'm working 2 shifts. It's 3:30 in the morning. I'm just trying to get home from my shift. I rattled off the address of where I work for, who I work for, their phone number. You can verify this stuff. And then he's like, I need to see your driver's license. I said, well, I believe it's in my, I had 3 bags. And so he's like, I said, it's in that bag, and he said, okay, well, let's get it. So I started to reach into it very carefully. I always use thumb and pointer finger, and the rest of my hand is open. I don't have clenched fist or anything like that. And I started to reach into it. He said, no, let me do it. It's like, that's fine. So I told him it should be in the second pocket in a clear plastic baggie. And he started rifling through paperwork. Well, it fell to the bottom. I didn't know this. He's looking for it. He said, it's not in here. And he's playing bad cop, and the other cop's playing good cop. And I'm just being cool with it. And he said, I can't find it. I said, oh, well, there's a possibility I left it at the job site in the other bag I carry. And so finally, he said, well, okay, you're fine. Just you be careful, because I kind of rolled through a light. Now, this is at 3:30 in the morning. There's no one out there. These guys are watching me, and they're just looking for a reason to shake me down. That's all. I mean, there's no one to endanger. I'm on a bicycle. But he's giving me the 3rd degree. And after he left, they were about ready to drive away, and I checked the bag. I said, "Oh, my ID's here. You want to check it?" He said, "No, we're good. Treat your bicycle like it's a car. Obey the same laws." I said, "Yes, officer. You got it. Mr. Stick in your pants, you got it. Mr. Officer Nutcracker, not a problem." I just kissed his butt. But the point of that long story is that if I approach it like your typical African-American dude in South Central, I probably would have been in cuffs or they would have beaten the crap out of me because he was pushing me on all my buttons and I just wouldn't give in to it,
Well, I think you're generalizing, John, in one sense, and I'll tell you why. Because I brought up a name of...
He can't generalize an experience like that. Are you crazy, James?
No, he said if I would have acted like every other African-American man in South Central, not every African-American man, maybe 30%. Okay, I want to say something quick, Don, and then you can talk.
Sorry about that.
James Mincey Jr. was 20 years old when the cops put him in a chokehold in September of 1993. Now, his family was paid out $1.1 million to four relatives years later. But, John, I liked your story, but I want to tell you something. The only thing that James Mincey was pulled over was for a cracked windshield. And then,
right. And what I'm saying, I was one.
Wait. About a mile later.
One reply. No, you wait. You hold, back it up here. I was one reply away from him slapping cuffs on me. I was one reply on him slamming me up against the wall. He's a white guy with big arms, and he was just waiting to crack one on me. And I was just very nice and cool and just simple and like, you guys are doing a great job. And I kept my hands up through the whole thing. And he's like, you can put your hands, he wasn't nice. He's like, you can put your hands down. And I said, I just want everyone to be, I don't want anyone to be nervous. I want everyone to be, just cool and not, and I want you guys to feel very comfortable. And the good cop was standing next to me. He said, "Oh, we're comfortable. You put your hands down." And I was like, okay. But the point is, I didn't let it go edgy. Any one wrong response, and he was going to...
I understand everything you said, and I respect you for it, especially your guardedness in the situation. But the thing I was upset about is I was reading an excerpt from an LA Times article of 1993, and before I could even tell you what this 20-year-old black person did in the Foothill Division, you automatically assumed he was a criminal. Maybe you didn't. But he got pulled over for a cracked windshield. And the problem didn't start until he was... So they let him go, and then he was driving back to his... Wait, let me finish!
Please stop.
He kept driving, and then a mile later he was stopped again. So he thought he was followed.
He was. Jane, will you stop? Please stop. You're saying stuff that everybody knows. Everybody knows that driving while black is a felony. Everybody knows that. Why are you embellishing one person for one issue when you got virtually 40% of all black men are being pulled over for nothing more than being black? A scratch.
I was just using someone's name specifically. But I was going to say the main reason I brought up that particular thing is because there was a LAPD department-wide policy that it was okay to put people in a chokehold, and they practiced in training, and nobody died, so they thought it was safe, but it wasn't.
I'm surprised that you can still call yourself a liberal and progressive. We need to go out. You need to go out. And you need to stand on the doorstep of the police department and tell them no more illegal arrests, no more criminal activity, drug activity. The drugs, the drugs that are being sold by people that are vetted and okayed by the police department. The evidence room. You've got guns, you've got drugs, you've got other things that are being taken away from the evidence room at every police department on a regular basis. This is something that this talk that you have is so cheap and it's so weak. You need to just put together a posse, a group, and go down and do something about this, because we can't do it as African Americans, as Hispanics. We can't do it. The gun goes in our mouth and they pull the trigger. We need to help. And this is what it's about.
I'm going to give John a chance to respond, and then I'm going to mute you for 10 seconds so I can get my point out. John, I'm going to go first. The point is I didn't know about this Mincey's death till 2 nights ago. When I was watching the entire 90-minute special on the LA riots, I was finding out new things that I didn't know, and Daryl Gates stuck his foot in his mouth when he said black people might be more likely to die from a chokehold than normal people. In other words, he said that they practice it in training, and he said Mincey was on PCP, and the toxicology report came back, and he was on no drugs at all. So I was just bringing up one example. I wasn't trying to be a martyr or an expert. I was just trying to bring up an example. Now, Don, you're off mute. It's John's turn to talk.
Well, I'm not an African American male, so I don't live with the same situations. I can only tell you, as a Hispanic male driving a red Camaro or a bicycle at 3 in the morning, looking like a homeless guy, that I want to live. So whether right or wrong, I'm going to be as smart as I can and live. And you can stand up and fight for your rights, but, as my brother used to say, one right you don't want to die for is the right of way. Like just live. Like, don't get in front of a train that's moving, even if you're in the right of way. So, whatever works for people. This stuff's been going on for years. So, the point I'm saying, my advice is learn how to live, or you're going to die. And yeah, you can march and protest, but this stuff's been going on for years. So why die? Is my point.
Blacks die every day for their point. Blacks die every day for that.
Right at this particular time in my life, I am not an activist. I'm sorry. But if someone was put in a chokehold like Eric Garner in Duluth, I might become involved.
Well, it's not about.
Ben can talk too.
It's not about activism. It's about being a human being, having morals, having the desire to help your fellow man, being charitable. Those are the things that you continually read about in your experts of the Bible. You continually talk about your past experiences. You continually.
So what's your beef, dude?
My beef is that you should have known about Reginald Denny, first of all.
I did know about Reginald Denny, but I didn't know who saved the guy. I didn't know it was a black guy who saved him.
All I'm saying is that this stuff, first of all, we've gone through 20 minutes of something we don't care about because you're not an activist, and that doesn't make sense either. But
no, you were barking at me for being something that I'm not.
Okay, well, bottom line is
I've spent plenty of years trying to be a savior and a martyr, but right now I'm just trying to pay off some debts, if you don't mind.
Okay, well, it's a beautiful night out here in
just like you spent you pissed away part of your life with the bottle. Well, I got issues too right now, and I can't save the whole damn world.
No, and that's not time. God tells you when it's time. He tells you when he's ready, and it's not. You're not ready if you're not in it. If your head's not in it right now, and that's good. I mean, everybody needs a break. I took a breather.
Well, you told me a half hour ago on text that here, I'll read it to you, but maybe we should give Ben a chance to talk, because he's probably kind of feeling like an outsider at this point.
Well, all I know is that if you don't read the text that I sent you, there's no need to go into that right now.
You just told me I wrote you something, I thought about something, and you wrote, not you, you're saving lives, get real.
Right.
What will they think?
Right.
So I'm saving life. Maybe I'm saving your life tonight, just like John saved mine 2 hours ago.
I don't know anything about that, but our bottom line is a good. Thank you, John. We appreciate it. Now we can be on the air.
It's the least I could do for white America.
There you go. See one more white woman around.
I told John about my first world problems, and now he's going to be my co-sponsor on my savings account.
Let me ask you a question.
But it's our business.
And that would be fantastic, having women's finance, having a discussion on women and financing, because they're the worst.
Not necessarily.
Go ahead, Ben, with your comment.
Okay, I have a question, actually. How much blame would you give gangster rap for escalation of violence? Because Ice Cube and Dr. Dre with the NWA and all the, the threats, the escalation, talking about killing witnesses and all kinds of stuff, it was, for the most part, I went through my phase of loving that kind of music, even though I'm not black. But I can appreciate, the poetry of it. But if a police officer or a mayor or a judge heard any of that stuff, they would declare war on that community. So how much credit do you give to the hardest gangster rap out there?
It's funny that you mentioned that, Ben. I'll answer first, and then Don can go. It's funny you mentioned that, because I had an article open from the New Yorker that they were recalling the LA riots. And in 1988, when Karen Toshima got hit by a drive-by in Westwood between 2 rival gangs, in that same year is when NWA recorded Straight Outta Compton addressing police brutality, and it went triple platinum. Well, because of that particular album and those lyrics, they also mentioned the shooting of Latasha Harlins, the one who was killed for putting a $2 orange juice in her backpack. That did kind of like unify. I wouldn't say it unified the gangs, but it kind of put a vocal identity to the problems that were going on in the city at the time. But I think John and Don are more the music experts in that area, so that's about all I have to say about it.
I'll just throw one quick thing, and that is I just think that people, black or white, should just stop saying racist stuff, stop talking violence and killing. But on the other hand, that's nice guy talk. I mean, probably the civil rights movement wouldn't have happened with me. I'd have been just keep your mouth shut, be a good citizen, and so forth. Some people had to march in the streets and get attacked by dogs and fire hydrants and tear gas and bullets and, lynchings and stuff like that. So I get that. But I just think that at a certain point, if you want love and peace, at some point you got to give some love and peace and not all the anger and the hate. However, I will say, working for my boss this week, I have been so nice, very nice, not saying a word back, and it gets her more and more pissed. She just gets angry, and it's like, I'm trying to be I'm not saying anything back. I'm not talking, I'm just saying yes, no, and how do you need, and do it. And she she was rebuking the devil. Said, oh, well, that devil will come out at John Yoder in the name of Jesus. And she's like blurting this stuff out. And she was on the phone. I listened for about 10 seconds, and I thought, I am a child of God. I'm not going to hear this. So I just hung up. You want to spew this stuff, but I'm just saying it's something in the nature of people. You give love, and it's like putting hot coals on them. They're just angry, and they're looking at someone to spew their violence on. So it just seems to me like...
One thing I want to mention... You're right, John. One thing I want to mention to Ben... Ben, not only were the blacks disenfranchised from the police, but the Koreans who had to defend their stores in the riots, they interviewed about 5 of them. They stood on their buildings. They had prior military training from the Korean War. Some of them had come over as Korean vets, and they said the police were nowhere to be found, and they were resentful too towards the police. They didn't make a rap album about it, but the hostility towards the police was prevalent in more than one community. Because technically, if there's no police presence and your business is being burned, then I'm pretty sure the city of Los Angeles had to reimburse some of those businesses that were burned to the core. Go ahead, Don.
Okay, so Don, specifically, what I'm trying to get at specifically is, do you think that the rap movement, as deep as dark as it got, had anything to do with the escalation?
Absolutely, on purpose. One of the things that everybody has to understand, and I've said it millions of times again, as usual, that the only race of people, the only culture of people who is not afraid of the white race, the mean, violent, vile, hateful white race, are blacks. The African Americans, the Africans are not fearful of whites at all. Whites' power is predicated on fear. And there is no fear in the black man. That's why he can wear his pants baggy and wear gold fonts and have braids down to his, back in the middle of his back and smoke weed and do anything, build cars with hydraulics and gaudy wheels and crazy paint jobs. And that's because we don't fear anything. We fear God, and we don't fear God. We more or less know we live with God. And that's all we care about. That's all African Americans care about. And when it comes down to the white man's laws, the white man's rules, the white man's mores,
Don, it was the Mexicans who created the gangs.
Gangs are tribal.
The Mexicans created the gangs in the 60s and 70s.
Stop.
They did too. Read Louis Rodriguez's book.
The gangs were I didn't say a word about gangs. I haven't talked about a gang.
I ain't your wigga, so don't be my igga.
Anyway, I didn't say a word about gangs. Gangs have been here forever. But anyway.
Do you know what a wigga is?
I know what a wigga is, you Nimrod. But the bottom line is that these things are not, this is something that will continue until discussion is made between all the cultures in America and an understanding of where people and their culture, the races stand in America. And blacks know we built America. America is ours. The Indians know property that it should only be leased.
I wouldn't
by
say
the white man.
Nobody owns America. It's a stratification of cultures.
Then why are these stupid white people running around with these guns protecting an acre here and 3 acres there that's not theirs? That doesn't make sense, James. You haven't made sense of one word on this whole show yet.
Hey, Don. So what I notice a lot is you have a collective mentality. Basically, you always say we and the black man, and you say we a lot, grouping the whole collective. You can't break away from the collective to be an individual. And I think there's a big difference between tribal behavior and collectivity, and there's a lot more individuals who happen to be of fair skin, who embrace being an individual and have nothing to do with a group of white people because they're more concerned with being an individual. And if we had somebody like maybe Ben Carson, who's black, but he doesn't collectivize, he's always speaking from an individual standpoint, which is very healthy to get the message across. When you shut people out of your group in the middle of your sentence, obviously you're going to have people counteract.
And that's where the truth gets convoluted, because the truth is in the message. And when people wash out the message because it's being told a certain way, that's a washout of them understanding what the message truly is about. The message is a collective message. The blacks in the Civil War, after the Civil War, they were promised and given, in many instances, their 40 acres and a mule, and then swindled out of them completely by nefarious business dealings, indentured servitude that they couldn't pay back. This is a collective. This is not an individual by individual case.
No, that's not an excuse anymore. We've gotten past that. None of these programs. None of these programs have been about current events in the last month and a half. We've talked about what was back in some goofball wearing some doggone pantaloons and a ponytail day. We haven't talked a damn thing about what's happening in 2017 in 2 months. So I'm assuming that going back to 1864 is appropriate for this damn show. But if we want to talk about what's real, in 2017, police brutality has at an all-time high. Murder rates are at an all-time high in police jurisdiction. We are killing our children systematically, on purpose, with pollution. Flint, Michigan was no accident. We're talking about other places that are here on the West Coast. We've had 2 major methane gas leaks that go on for weeks. Methane gas is one of the biggest killers of people, period, in terms of gas. We're talking about this is methodical genocide. This is war. This is something that if you people, anybody who has a weak stomach, they need to go back in the cave and throw the rock in front of it and just hope that maybe when they come out in 25 years, they'll be able to see a better country because of people like me who are looking out for the regular person who are doing what they do out of love and respect for the human race and not bursting out slap. I disagree with what you just. Okay. I disagree with what you just said.
If I could say something, first of all, Don, I want to give you a big hug. I don't know if a white person or a brown person's hugged you in a long time, but I'm going to give you one. You can't. I can't change the police. I can't change history. I can't change culture. But right now, I can tell you, with one foot. Well, let me finish my thought. 1 foot away from me is an African American brother in Christ. We're going to record him free. We're doing video free. We're going to go get a Burger King, and I'm going to treat my brother because I love my brother. And if he needs a place to stay tonight, he's going to stay at my place. And if I'm not around and he needs a place to hang out, he can hang out in my car. I gave him a key to my car. The point is, you can't change the world, but you can change your own personal space. And I don't know what the big solution is, but just I know in our personal lives we can do things to help the brother or the sister or the Mexican, the Chinese guy, the Korean guy that's right next to us. And I just hope everyone does that. But I think sometimes we look at the daunting picture of the world. It's like after hearing, what you just said, I was about ready to jump off the Santa Monica Pier and kill myself. It's like there's no hope for the world. But I think if we keep it together and love each other, I think there's a future for the world, And there's a lot of bad stuff. I'm not doubting that. But sometimes I think we miss the person right next to us. We miss the one things that we can control. I can control this one situation. I can't control this other stuff. It's beyond me.
Well, that's all. I love you to death, John, but every damn word you just said was wrong. And Ben too. Ben, you're a great man, from what I understand. But damn, everything you just said was wrong. This is about a race. This is about a race of people. This is an example. and maybe John has experienced this. You go into a store. You got 10 white people and 3 black people and 2 Hispanic people. Security in that store is going to look at those 3 black people and those 2 Hispanic people far close, 35 to 40% more closely than they will those white people.
We just walked. By the way, we just walked into a CVS Rite Aid, bought some ice cream, and walked out. No one was following me and my brother, man. We were talking a Hispanic guy with a ball cap and a brother who, you know, he looks clean, by the way. But you know, I mean, like I say, we would be suspicious. The first people that they would suspect. I'm just saying, maybe in Nevada or maybe Utah or wherever, you know, maybe just LA's different. But it's like we assimilate, you know, except at 4 a.m. on a bicycle.
Right, and
they did shake him down when he came to visit me a week ago. I have to say, he had to call me at 2:30. I was walking down the alleyway getting off of work, and they had put a light on him, and they were asking him 20 questions till I walked up and said, "Oh, he's with me. We're just recording. We're musicians." And they lightened up a little, but.
So you're validating everything I just said.
Well, at 3:30 in an alley, yeah. I mean, any person walking through where the garbage cans are. But I'm saying we went in CVS Thrifty. They didn't shake us down. You know, they never do there. It was cool.
Well, I'd like to know what I said that was wrong specifically.
The collective part. Don't get it twisted, Ben. This is a collective problem. That's why they call it institutional.
Right, but
racism.
It's confusing.
That's why they call it systemic brutality. They call it that because it is, in fact, nothing you can say. It is a collective problem. It is not an individual problem. And John, there can be an individual of any race, any time, who's going to be, I don't know how to say it, more amenable to the world around them than some of the others, but that one individual is few and far between, and to find them is a coup.
Well, that's coming from the left. That message is the left's message. It means that you have to be part of a collective. There is no individuals coming from the left. You're not pushing for individuality. You're pushing for more collectivity and more equity, which is equality of outcome.
Well, most of these books that talk about institutionalization and systemic situations, those books are written by Republicans too, or conservatives also. They're the ones who.
Yeah, but it goes back before. This situation here goes back way before there was even Democrats and Republicans. It's just a mentality.
This is about who built America, and it's obvious that the indigenous people built America. They lived here, and they're the ones who provided the grain, provided the fowls and the animals for the whites to prosper. And the whites have done nothing but killed them. That's why Columbus is ready to his Columbus Day is ready to be legislated out in many states, because they understand that Christopher Columbus came over here because the Indians broke bread with him, and after they finished eating, he just went out and started raping and killing people.
Well, yeah, but your message about what you push for is out of love, and that's that specific love to your specific group that you belong to. If you ask Ben Carson, Ben Carson is a great example.
He's not a great example. Ben Carson is a great surgeon and a horrible human being.
Because he's on the other side.
You're
on the opposing side.
No. He's a bad person. He's out of balance. Ben Carson is ultra evangelical, and you cannot be an ultra evangelical and live in a civilized society with other people, because you do not tolerate anybody else. You don't you judge people immediately, and the judgments are completely against what your values are. That's
wait. So you think? Hold on. Let me get this straight. You think Ben Carson is evil and a bad person, and he can't function because he judges people immediately? That's what you just said?
Absolutely.
You just judged him immediately. You do not know him, right?
No. I mean, I'm talking about what I've seen of him. No, I have not met Bill. I've met a lot of other people, believe me, but I have not met Ben Carson. And normally, I don't judge. And in this particular instance, I'm only judging from the ilk of people that he emulates, that he relates to. And those people are not sensitive or empathetic to anybody else but themselves and people like them. That's what I'm saying. If you were if you were a person who was an Aryan Nation person, you are automatically ruling out the Jews, blacks, anyone who's gay as a person, and they should be eliminated. It's real simple, Ben. That's their.
Well, that sounds like what you're doing. That's why I brought it up, because it sounds like that's what you're a part of.
I'm not doing that. I'm just telling you and everybody else what those people are like and what their psychological makeup is like. That's all I'm saying. I'm not. Ben Carson is probably the nicest guy. He probably, after he gets out with blood all over his hand and the organ tissues that are still stuck in his pocket, he probably goes and sits down in his Barker lounger with a beer and watches, some kind of, empire too, with everybody else. But the bottom line is that what he is doing is he's making judgments before he even meets people, because if he saw a Muslim, for instance, he would be immediately be guilty of bigotry, because it could be a white, blue-eyed, blonde Muslim, but his church, his evangelical teachings and understandings and followings and brainwashing does not allow him to judge this person as a human being. This person is a Muslim who is a detriment to him, his family, and his religion and way of life. And that's just what it is. It's a natural thing for human beings to do that, to protect their interests. And that's why when I say those generalizations, they are generalizations, because I am the anomaly. I am the one. I'm the person who has the ability to reach out to whomever. I can traverse cultures, and that's, for me it's easy, but it's one of the hardest things that people can do. And in my experiences and my working, and when I'm working, I do it where I empathize. I understand everyone's predicament that I deal with, and I make sure that their position is taken seriously, that everything that they do and everything they say and everything they stand for is considered in any equation that would lead to any decision. So that's one of the things that I do. And these are experiences that I'm talking about. This have nothing to do with verbiage or nomenclature or any other kind of opaque decisions or anything like that, opinions of anyone. These are just general observations from experience that is more or less real. This is what I observe, and then my observations more than not are extremely accurate. And this is, and I'm not in this particular instance. Again, you might be wrong, because I'm not talking about Ben Carson per se as an individual, even though the topic was about
but
him.
He is. That's important because he is one.
But again, we're talking about, if you are saying that I'm talking about evil, yes, he is evil because his sole purpose right now is no longer to create, is no longer to save. He is here to destroy. That's Donald Trump's agenda, to destroy everything that America is. He was put in the DHS to destroy the department or change it significantly to where it's relatively unrecognizable and accommodate a sizable cost reduction. A cut.
You and I disagree on that, but let me.
So you're saying Ben Carson was put in there to save the DHS? Okay.
Yes, I think he was. I think he's smart enough. But let's generalize for a second. Let me generalize the message.
That's wrong. That's wrong.
Okay.
Go ahead,
well, let me generalize the left.
Just like Betsy DeVos, just like Jeff Sessions. They're all in there. They're not there to save. They're not in there to make it better. They're there to.
Okay, I'm not debating those two people. I don't know enough about them to argue.
Everybody in cabinet, everybody in Donald Trump's cabinet is there to do that very thing. Every one of these departments, he has assigned these people, and you'll see what I'm talking about.
I have been reading up, and I do have concerns, and it's coming from the same side that you're on. And I wish I could generalize. I won't take too much time, but the message I'm getting from the news that's coming from the left are the far left. The left moved farther left, and you probably agree. But if you're a liberal left and you push that message, you're pushing the entire message, which is more Islamic influence in America, black equity especially, and women's, minority of all kinds that want to join. Let's see. What other message? More government influence, disarmament of the Second Amendment. All these things are coming from the opposite of the Constitution, and you see conservatives, their message is the Constitution, basically.
There's that imbalance. You just verified exactly what I've been saying. There's an imbalance here. There has been occasionally over time there are imbalances between right and left, conservative, liberal, whatever you want to call it. Right now we are well overbalanced in the Republican sphere. We have been for decades now. And so our laws and things that have been passed or that are being processed or being enforced are against freedom. They are intrusive. When you talk about military might, when you talk about police forces, their general behaviors and tendencies and cultures, you're talking about applying the law. And applying the law naturally is antithetical to increasing or having freedom. Those are two opposites. And there shouldn't be a need to apply the law, have tanks and guns and everybody's. If you ask any cop, any pig will tell you that they are definitely afraid of their lives every time they leave their front door. That's an automatic mantra. They teach them probably, I'm not sure about this, but I'm sure they teach them in training school to be scared of everything. Everything. Their shadow. They're scared of that. So the bottom line is that they are out there in a mental mood where they are ready to react to anything that they see that may wrangle them or ruffle their feathers or anything that they perceive as a danger, as an imminent threat. And it's in their codes that they destroy something, they take something out until they no longer feel threatened. Feeling it's a subjective thing. And when you are brought up, like so many are in police forces, in the Aryan Nation KKK doctrine, white supremacists and entitlement, those are things that make that subjective concept or ideology an objective piece of evidence or testimony when they have to go to trial and they're exonerated for killing 12 people just because their finger was a little bit fatter and it was on the trigger too long. You know, that's just not an acceptable defense, but yet their uncle, the judge, or grandpa, DA, is going to tell them, oh, we understand, and man, you get a chance to have probation for 6 months and then you get your gun back. That's normal operating procedure, Ben. That's normal operating procedure. And all this crap that you're talking about right now is superfluous. It has nothing to do with anything because it's out of reality.
Well, it's taking your message away from you. All those other things I listed, all the other things I listed, besides the ones you're interested, they're taking away from your message. They're actually stronger than your message because they get more play on the media. The social justice fights right now, and you're part of a very slim margin of social justice fight right now. You're not in the whole what the media is enticed in right now is colleges basically trying to attack the English language with social justice problems. You kind of moved out of the limelight for this moment, but I see where you're coming from.
Yeah, you might be right about that because for the most part, social justice issues are like everything else. They're cyclical. They come and go. And right now, the immigration, and that's what I found out at my symposium Friday, is the immigration issue is, in fact, in America right now, front and center. The women's fight isn't even there right now. The equal pay, which is the one that a lot of people should be fighting because the corporate inequities are, the big corporations are completely out of whack. You've got these internet corporations bringing in billions of dollars a day, and their tax rates and everything else don't go up, or they're not paying nearly as much with their deductions. Their corporate culture is abysmal. I don't know if you saw the national papers, but a big article today on how Silicon Valley, the internet companies, have no minorities, 3% minorities and women of color or gender, LGBT, because the culture of the corporation, when they get in the office, they're completely harassed. There's a complete culture of harassment, sexually, racially, and men, gender. So we're talking about it's still being done. I can tell you, I've got people that I deal with who have testimony. One lady, we're talking about, she had a job up in Idaho, and at lunchtime she would see the bosses take out ladies from the break room, and everybody knew what that was. The boss was going back, having sex, and bringing them back. And that was, nobody said anything because their jobs are on the line. Their jobs, their money. And that's what I'm saying is wrong. That's wrong. We should worry about the person.
You guys have to respect each other's views, even if you don't. I'm not saying either one is violating it, but
we respect our views.
You both come from a different perspective. You can't classify it as right or wrong.
I'm not getting what Ben's perspective would be if he understood the situation clearly. If he understood that if the white man and the black man were standing on the street corner and the police came up, the white man would be told to get out the way and the black man would be arrested. That's 30% of a fact. That's a fact. 30% of it.
Okay.
If there were some kind of need for questioning of those two men on the corner, that would be the General Darryl in most places.
Can you take a step back and look at what I'm seeing, though? As these little social justice fights that we have going on between ourselves are part of the smoke screen to keep your eyes off of actually being prepared for what could happen. Geopolitics. These little skirmishes that we have, are we still going to be doing this if we're getting invaded? No, we're all going to be Americans all of a sudden. In one instant, you and me are just Americans.
Right.
So we need to keep that in mind. Quit this bickering about who gets what and who should have what now.
But that's the whole point.
Real.
That's the whole point, Ben. That's the whole point. Blacks and Hispanics, they just want to live. They don't want this argument. We don't want your fight. We don't want to be classified as blacks or Hispanics or Jewish or whatever the case may be. We want to be classified as American. But we don't have the opportunity when most of our men are going to jail and prison for doing nothing. And we want to make sure that we're included as being Americans. That's un-American. So
how many go to the Navy?
And how many go to the Navy and get kicked out in basic training? And
a larger percentage of blacks join the military than whites per population.
Right.
For some, that's their only way to the next level.
Exactly. But it's also, that's only one thing. It's also because we have been trained. We have been ingrained to help when help is needed. That's the cultural thing I'm trying to mention to you, Ben. There is a cultural situation where blacks have been, being slaves, you're trained to help people, to make things, to keep things in working order. That's what we did. We were professional maintenance people. We could.
Okay, well, somewhere along the line, we have similar attributes. Because I have DNA too, and the DNA that allowed me to be here today has a lot of survival instinct.
Black DNA. Ben, recognize. You got to recognize. It's black.
Oh, come
DNA.
on!
Everybody. Where's the cradle of civilization? Come on, James. You know. It's in Africa.
The Caucasus Mountains. Just kidding.
No, that is where.
The Tigris-Euphrates River.
You know where that's at.
So you have. So everybody, Don, you have survival. You have survival in your genes. So do I. We might have different traits. We have different traits. We have different skills. We have different minds. But we come from survival. Either way.
No. God, Ben, you are off. We have the same skills. We have the same survival instincts. We all have the same red blood. It's where we were trained. It's our experiences. It's what we have been taught to believe over time. That's the difference. We were all born.
I'm the illegitimate daughter of Genghis Khan.
You might be. Bottom line is that, you guys were short, and, you might be. But anyway, the bottom line, Ben, is that we all, had the same, at birth, we had the same eyesight. We had the same number of toes and fingers. We all, had the same general facial and body structure. We're all the same. It's what has been taught to us over time. And the difference is what people in general black culture have become.
So what you're saying?
The blacks are bigger. Blacks are bigger, stronger, faster, smarter. Period.
Well, on the smarter part, is that verified by IQ test scores and scholastically? Because Like when I'm recording an artist, I can tell you half the time if the person's black. Not always, but most of the time if they're black. I can tell a Asian singer. And I've listened to some of the like Philippines or Japanese or Korean. Their tonality is totally different. It just is. And white girls sound different. And I mean, we may be equal in the law or before the Lord, but I'm just saying we're not all equal. Otherwise, we'd all have the same color skin. We'd all be the same height. I don't think our test scores are going to be the same academically. It's beautiful. We're different. Like, celebrate it. I don't know why we need to hate on anyone.
Well, bottom line is that okay, whites know what a yacht is. I've gone through this example before. Blacks don't know what a yacht is, but blacks know what chitlins are, and white folks don't know what chitlins are. So
I do, because I lived in the South.
Who cares about
you anything?
We're talking about being same and being different, and the only thing that makes us different is the environment that we grew up in and where we went to learn in the school.
Oh yeah.
I guarantee you, Dr. Dre knows what a yacht is.
Dr. Who?
Dr. Dre knows exactly what a yacht is.
Yeah, Dr. Dre had to take it. He had to take it. He wasn't being. You know that 60 years ago, it was illegal, and they could be killed if they taught black people how to read. Right?
50 years ago.
50 years ago.
More like 100.
No. James, shut up. Not even 60 years. It's in the Brown versus Board of Education. They had to legislate the fact that a black person was allowed to learn to read. It wasn't Brown versus Board. I think it was Kennewick or one of those other states down in North Carolina. But bottom line is that it was illegal to teach black children or any black how to read.
That was 60 years ago, not 50.
It was 60. It doesn't matter. What's 10 years? In 10 years, you might be dead. 10 years.
That's long enough to read a book.
Is that in practice today, or in the last 10 years, or 20, or in my lifetime?
What was that now?
Is that in practice today that it's against the law and they'll kill you if you teach black people how to read? I mean, are we practicing this in my lifetime?
Now, right now, the way that they're doing it is that they are making inner city schools substandard. So they, the books and
inner city schools. The biggest problem, inner city schools are run by Democrats who could have solved it a long time ago. I just said that.
We'll see what Betsy DeVos can do.
Look at the worst communities, the biggest disaster communities. Are they all run by Democrats or not?
No. The Democrats
good point.
Not necessarily.
Democrats are trying to get in as much money as they possibly can. Republicans are cutting services and
no.
Education.
Republicans are the ones ruining public education. They are in Wisconsin.
They are everywhere
Okay,
else.
well, I'm not talking
They're
about
trying
now.
to save money.
I'm talking about still. 100 years.
Okay, in some ways I don't feel like we're getting anywhere.
No, no, we're getting places, believe me. But bottom line is that this is one of the most. If I'm involved like this, it's.
Can we shake you down on a bike?
Who, me? I got shaken down on the car. I don't need a fucking bike. Now you got to understand that this is, to this day, I'm in the middle of this, Jane. You guys, I'm in the middle of all this.
Okay, chill out. Can't you laugh at anything?
I can't chill out.
I want to know what chitlins are.
This shit doesn't exist. And then they're negating
I was gonna
this
play Fuck
conversation
Y'all Police
by
by
saying
the
the fucking
NWA.
conversation is being NWA was a process of people trying to make sure that they did talk about the conversation and didn't give a shit about people watering down and the message so that they can freaking try to talk around the subject, which is exactly what that is. NWA wanted to put that shit in your face, and they did. And people and they had to say it over and over and over again. It's like prayer. You have to say it over and over again before people are able to understand.
Is that like chitlins? They don't give a chitlins about stuff? Because I still don't know what chitlins
they don't give
are.
a chitlins about. And that's the whole point. Black people don't give a chitlins about no white people.
I know what a collard is too.
Yeah, a collard it goes around your neck and you tighten it up if the person is not.
No, a green collard. Chitterlings are a prepared food usually made from small intestines of pig, although intestines of cattle and other animals are used.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying about IQ. You have no fucking IQ for the black race. If you have the,
I do, motherfucker. I have a black kid.
If we had that doesn't mean anything. You've done it. I've got a white kid too, and I'm being accused of being lumping people in common together. You know, I fight the white.
Okay, black brother. What's Lefsa?
Yes.
Let's see how much you know about the white race.
Go ahead.
What's
Anything
Lefsa? No,
Lefsa?
It's a Lefsa.
Lefsa is the opposite of right side.
No, it's a traditional soft Norwegian flatbread made of potatoes, flour, butter, and milk.
Oh, God, that's Lefsa.
Lefsa!
Lefsa is Lefsa.
And Swedish korv. Okay. Do you know what Swedish korv is?
No.
Dang. No, this is stuff. I'm from Wisconsin, man. I should know this. I know this stuff, but I haven't been there for such a long time that I forgot what it is.
Just a little Lefsa. There's even a song about it.
I wouldn't doubt it. There's a song about everything.
Swedish korv is lean pork, beef, potatoes, onions, and peppers grinded together.
Oh. Okay. You put a batter around that. That would be a great croquette.
Will it protect you from a police shakedown? You just throw it at them?
Yeah, no, and then you get shot 15 times. 15, and then they would be. I know they'd be pissed off. You only got them 15 times. You're fired.
They fire off like 5 rounds, right? they give like 100 bullet holes in you when they start shooting.
Yep.
Round Swedish women can buffer you from the cops.
Oh, man. But the thing is that these white officers are so stupid that they are going out in shopping centers and malls and schools and shooting people up with everybody standing around. That's completely against protocol. It's completely against rules and regulations of use of force codes. And they do it on a regular basis.
Where did that happen recently?
Oh, come on, Jane. You need to go back in your cave. This right here in Reno.
I never lived in a cave.
Then you might want to try. That's the last place you've tried yet. But we're talking about here in Reno, Nevada. We just had a shooting on a school, Hug High School, last October, and I mentioned it then. And we had this shooting where this kid had a knife, white kid, and he had a knife brandishing it, swinging it all around because some guy, other kid had threatened him or whatever in the past. So he's doing that, and the school police shoot him. There were an estimated 100 people, 100 students standing around. All right? This police, I'm sorry, I've been calling him, this asshole is shooting this guy with kids standing all around, which is against protocol. And yes, he was exonerated. You know, and we're talking about white people and white people, and they're being exonerated. So this is so sick that the white are being exonerated for shooting their own people. And that's sick.
What do you think about Sheriff Clark?
I have to tell you guys something. I want to beeline to the conclusions now because we've been on the air. It'll be 90 minutes in about 10 minutes. And I want to tie my conclusion in with this New Yorker article. I appreciate you sharing that, Don. And there was another 15-year-old black child killed in a Texas shooting this week when a police shot into a car. But would you guys mind if I pregnant pause a minute and read this article so we can get along with our conclusions?
Sure.
Does anyone mind?
No, I'm on.
The video of Rodney King, the motorist who was beaten by the LAPD in 91, would ultimately spark 6 days of violence. He asked, "Can we all get along?" It's still 25 years later astonishing to watch. He made the remarks at an impromptu press conference in his lawyer's office on the third day of the violence, which began April 29, 1992, after the cops who were caught on camera beating him were acquitted of wrongdoing. King's voice is unsteady. He fumbles for the words and appears on the verge of tears. He is overcome. As he speaks, buildings are burning in his name. Cars have been set aflame. More than 1,100,000 arrests were made in less than a week. 2,000 injuries were reported. 55 deaths. Mostly African Americans will die. King's question became a meme almost instantly, but most of us knew that word. It was ridiculed as infantile. How would it be possible to get along in a city where the police operate above the law, where African Americans suffer daily under the lash of a crooked justice system that echoes the brutality of slave catchers and overseers? How can we get along when Korean shop owners are targeted and attacked, their businesses burned, and they stand on rooftops armed with high-caliber weapons in broad daylight as firefights erupt on city streets? How can we get along when Reginald Denny, a white truck driver who was hauling gravel past the corner of Florence and Normandy, was pulled from his cab and beaten nearly by fist, boots, and brick hurled with full force, point-blank range at his temple? These were the circumstances in L.A. in the spring of 92. Obviously, we could not get along. And yet King's question is striking today for its endurance as much as its innocence. It still hangs in the air, still taunts us. To explore the question with any kind of earnestness demands a careful and considered humanization of all that led to the riots. This is the approach taken by ABC documentary Let It Fall, L.A. from 82 to 92, which screened in theaters last weekend and premiered on TV Friday night. The feature-length film, directed by the 12 Years a Slave screenwriter and crime show writer John Ridley, is a slew of documentaries marking the 25th anniversary. What sets Ridley apart is not the power of the archival footage, but the interviews he has done and the time that he takes with him. As the title indicates, Ridley begins a decade before the world heard about Rodney King, chronicling the death of James Mincey, a black motorist who was maced and choked to death in his mother's driveway after failing to comply with a routine traffic stop for a cracked windshield. Mincey's death is recalled by his girlfriend. Like all the interviews in the film, she is shot warmly, close enough for us to see her thinking and feeling, but not so close to feel invasive. Mincey's death by chokehold was a public relations disaster for the LAPD, which claimed that he was on PCP before a toxicology report refuted that premise. Tensions were further exacerbated when Daryl Gates, the police chief at the time, suggested that black people might be more likely to die from a chokehold than normal people. Soon after Mincey's death, chokeholds were banned and officers used metal batons instead. Gates would remain the chief of police through the beating of Rodney King and the riots. Ridley also zeroes in on the death of Karen Toshima, a 27-year-old graphic artist in Westwood in February of '88. Toshima was caught in the crossfire during a shootout between rival gangs in the posh neighborhood. The LAPD responded to an ensuing panic driven largely by fear that the gang problem was beginning to affect non-black neighborhoods by undertaking mass arrests and enhanced enforcement. Thousands of new officers were quickly hired, shoddily trained, and sent forth with a singular mission to bring the hammer down. In one April weekend that year, 1,453 people were arrested. That was also the year of NWA's recording Straight Outta Compton, addressing police brutality on a record that would go triple platinum and capturing the feeling of turbulence and trouble in neighborhoods south of the freeway. When the actual acquittal of the officers who beat King is remembered in the event that incited the riots, fewer accounts today mention the shooting of Latasha Harlins, which took place less than 2 weeks after the beating of King came to light. Harlins was a 15-year-old in South Central who got into a dispute with a Korean shopkeeper named Soon Ja-do. Do accused Harlins of attempting to steal a carton of orange juice. Security footage showed that the altercation became heated when Do grabbed Harlins throwing blows at the 51-year-old and then Do throwing a stool at the child. When Harlins tried to leave without the orange juice, Do shot her in the back and killed her in the head instantly. Eyewitnesses reported, and the LAPD later concluded that Harlins was not trying to steal the orange juice, but rather had it in her open backpack with her money in her hand to pay for it. 8 months later, Do was found guilty of manslaughter, and the jury recommended the maximum sentence of 16 years. But the trial judge, Joyce Carlin, instead sentenced her to 5 years probation, 400 hours of community service, and a $500 fine. This is not time for revenge, Carlin said in her sentencing remarks. Less than 6 months later, most of the stores burned during the riots, which were Korean-owned businesses. Korean business owners formed ad hoc militias, footage presented in Let It Fall, and these groups engaged in gunfire in the middle of the streets. So I'm just going to stop there. You got the gist of it. Any comments?
Yeah. With great power comes great responsibility. So if the police force is supposed to keep us from tearing each other apart, then they have a power that's supposed to be equal and opposing to our power, and they need to use their moral discretion every day.
I also think that in this case, in those South Central neighborhoods, because of the few incidences that proliferated it, like the death of that 15-year-old, that certain aspects, like certain chunks of black people viewed all Koreans bad, and certain Koreans viewed all blacks as bad, except for the people they had individual relationships with. And that increased the distrust between those two particular groups. But then, as the article said, the violence moved out of the difficult neighborhoods into the richer neighborhoods, and then the problem became citywide. So I'm not going to do it. I'm going to do one last conclusion, but I'm going to wait till everybody's done. I'm going to read a quote by a priest, which is rather short, so you don't have to stress out. Does anyone else have a conclusion?
Well, I think the issue is sin, never skin. I don't know. I think if you had all black police in Watts and South Central, whatever, I still think you would have the same problems. I just, in North Korea, Kim Jong-un, or however you pronounce his name, I mean, he killed his own brother, his uncle. He kills anyone that doesn't like him. You know, you had Genghis Khan. He was like, you know, just brutal. It wasn't black on Chinese crime. It just, I think wherever people have positions of power, they're wicked in their heart, and that's how they're going to respond. Or you can be righteous in your heart. I just pray that we have more righteous people in law enforcement, and just as importantly, that we raise a culture of people that stop breaking the law, stop doing stupid stuff, you know, and try to be law-abiding citizens. That would really help. But I don't see that happening, you know, in our culture, the way we're educating and raising kids nowadays. How come we're not raising them with spiritual fortitude, with spiritual tools? How come we're not allowed to? We can't talk about God. So naturally, they're going to be in a spirit.
Well, I agree with you, John, that I think there's like in a place like where Genghis Khan was crossing the whole entire Asian continent, he did the slash and burn technique, and whoever didn't bow down to him pretty much was toast. Now, there's different elements of violence and suppression on different stratified levels of society, and people will resort to violence no matter what their skin color. But and we're all guilty of it, white, black, Asian, and others. Especially people like the Asians were in fear. But it doesn't make it right, but it is human nature ultimately. Ben, do you have a conclusion, or Don?
Don.
Yeah, Ben, you want to go, or I can go, because I've said pretty much a lot this program. But for the most part, we are all one type of people. We all came from Africa. There's no doubt about that. In the scientific community and the religious community, as you know, this is what's been taught, but it's been bastardized because there is a power. And yes, John, you're right. Power begets power. But there is a power that is bent on. It's almost self-destruction, but it's destroying everyone who's not of their ilk, not of their kind. And that's what we have to that's the hurdle that we have to go on if we are looking for peace and love and happiness. There is no peace, love, and happiness in munitions and anger and violence. And that's being proposed by our president, our present administration, and from the top, and has been propagated throughout human history. So, slash and burn will not end. And yes, there is going to be no peace in the world for the foreseeable future or even eons. And that's my conclusion.
In relationship to what you said, Don, I think the average person doesn't use violence unless they've been oppressed over and over for years. Like a lot of those people who acted up in the riots, not all of them had a prior criminal record. So right. It was just a massive frustration.
Right, and that's where the culture comes in. That's where mass collective consciousness and culture comes in. It's because those reprehensible repressions occurred on one color or one general color of people, and that's people with darker skin than white. Our indigenous community, they have gone through more words can display. That at least they incarcerate African Americans. They just try and kill Indians. And so.
Well, I was watching a special on Anthony Bourdain, and he said they were talking about Boyle Heights and the gentrification of LA and how trendy new restaurants are moving in there. And there was a Mexican American talking that said in Mexico we're not dark enough. In America, we're not light enough. He said, but at least there's one thing we know: we're Californians. Like, even within a race, there's judgment on people's skin color.
Right, and you heard what he said. California was Mexico's territory, as was Arizona
and that's what he meant. He meant that we were Californians to start out with.
Right, but they still are. The treaties that the white man made with them, the white man broke. Most all the.
And it was also the Spanish that Christianized California with all the missions way back in the 1500s.
Right, and they Christianized it with, the force of the Catholic Church behind them, because the Roman army at that time had a stronger army for violence and killing than the Catholic Church, which was the predominant religion that came in and proselytized the region. So we're talking about.
Well, I'm going to read this last quote because it's relevant to what John says, and then I'm going to let Ben go. So Father Anthony Mulaney, who was on trial for burning draft cards in '68, said this during his trial: "We are a nation today that fears its young. We fear its poor. Well, we should not fear the young or poor. Fear those who have the power to remove the injustices which shackle the young and poor, and who yet refuse to use their power in the service of history and mankind." That's the end of the quote. So John went, Don went, pretty much. Ben, it's your turn.
Okay. Well, clearly the saying still holds that power attracts the worst and corrupts the best. And that's true for anybody with power. And the things I kind of argue against are a lot of times are things that I think could lead us down the road towards where Venezuela's at now. And all those things were agreed upon out of humanity. And as soon as they were disarmed, all that stuff that they thought was nice and good for people, it got turned off. The government owned them, and there's no easy way to get that back. Once you turn it off, it's off. You're
right, and they just pulled out of the OAS, the Organization of American States, too, and they're becoming a rogue nation.
Hey, folks, I've got to get going, so I appreciate it.
Okay, well, thanks for all your heated debate.
Yeah, no problem. It wasn't heated debate. Is what it was. It's nothing against anybody.
Well, I'll send you some Swedish Corvin Norwegian Lefsa in the mail.
All right, I appreciate it. We'll be looking for it.
See you later, Don.
Okay. Hope to see you in June.
Right.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
So I was going to mention, Ben, before we all hang up, is that during that Anthony Bourdain special, he was also interviewing a Mexican-American cop who was in the Los Angeles Rampart Division. I don't know if John and I are aware, but I don't know if you realize, but there was a huge scandal in the Rampart Division, too, like taking money off of drug runners and stuff. And Denzel Washington eventually starred in a movie based on that scandal. So I don't know if LA is the best example of police relations because there's so many exceptions in that city.
Oh, Training Day. That was a good movie.
Yeah, I knew it had. I forgot the title.
I think LA doesn't have the monopoly on corruption. I mean, dirty cops in New York, Chicago. Remember the Untouchables? There was just so many dirty cops trying to deal with Al Capone and other people mob related that you just just had to totally change the culture. But I'm just the kind of person, I give the police more of a pass maybe than I should. I just feel that they're the people covering our butt, you know, and even if they harass me, as long as they let me walk away, and that's how I get by. I just think that people, the main thing is adapt or die. And if you don't adapt, you're going to die. And I don't want to die. You know, that's how I've gone through life. Some people, they just want to, you know, stand in front of a railroad train and wave their fists, and that's okay. I refuse to die that way. You know, maybe one day I'll think differently, but I just want to live. I work with what I've got, and I just feel that's the only strategy that works well for me.
The last thing I want to say, John, in relationship to that was that there, for a time in brief periods we mentioned tonight, the LA police did not cover people's butts in all the neighborhoods. They didn't have the capacity. I'm not blaming one side or the other. But also in that south central region, it used to be a big factory area, and there used to be plenty of jobs, and eventually that phased out, and now it's basically a lot of south central is run by the Mexican community, and a lot of the blacks moved out to the foothill area, San Fernando, and to the Palmdale. So there's been a lot of changes in that community throughout the last 30 years. So, but okay, do you guys have any final thoughts before I play John's song?
I'm good.
Okay, I'm going to play someone you recall. Okay, John, I'm playing someone you recall. Okay? Don't forget to listen to John's videos on YouTube. You can find it under John Yoder. He has a new set of life rules. Thank you for joining us, Ben. You can also help us pick a topic for next week if you'd like. Just text me or email me during the week.
Okay.
Here we go. Yep.
Remember the
John, you can say good night, America. Good night, America.
But am I someone you recall?
Yes, we spoke 2 hours ago.
Oh,
I'm
that's
doing
right.
better now. I'm back to normal. Okay?
Oh, good. You climbed off the ledge.
I'm in Reginald Denny's driving gravel through South Central, marking my territory.
Poor Reginald. He was such a sacrificial lamb. No one really cares about him because he's white. You know, I don't hear a lot of Reggie.
He had years of rehab after that, and I think a little bit of a brain injury, which is the kind of people I work with.
I know, and the sad thing is, through the whole conversation, there wasn't any sympathy for him, really, or any conversation.
Well, I watched the interview on YouTube. He's much older now, but he talked coherently and he was doing fine. But I'm sure he had a lot of rough days after that. You know what I mean?
Well, he's kind of like a sacrificial lamb, and kind of like, well, it's not enough payback. It's just the beginning of payback, as compared to if he was a different race, it would have been like an outrage, that he was, attacked. But he was attacked because he was white, so therefore is acceptable. And I know they go, well, because a million other people was oppressed. But I'm just saying, injustice is injustice. No matter what, it's not justified.
No, it wasn't, and he had part of his brain swell from the. See, I was trying to get this clip, but I don't have the actual documentary, The Fall of Los Angeles, over the 10 years, But basically, the black guy who stomped Reginald Denny on the head, I had his name earlier, it was like KiKi Watkins. He was a U.S. Marine. He was a U.S. Marine, and he was using some of the same lingo Don uses, that black people are only classified into 2 categories and stuff like that. Like, he was talking about how black people were marginalized.
Right.
Well, anyways, I'm going to go to bed now. It's 1:19 in Minnesota, and I'll call you later in the week about that agreement we had. Okay?
Scooby-Doo.
Okay, thank you for joining us, and you'll be $60 richer tomorrow, okay?
I'm thinking of all the things I can do with it.
Okay, well, stay away from cops on a bike if all possible.
Okay.
Okay? All right, God bless you. Good night.
Good night.